Penn State football gets a record-setting night from its running backs on the way to a blowout victory, 37-10. Wow. I think a lot of us thought this was going to be a low-scoring game. Both teams really like to run the football. Both teams really like to play ball control, play action, mitigate the quarterback. And you can do that and still score a lot of points if you rip off long runs, and then the defense has to account for that, and suddenly you're ripping off long passes. So Penn State gets the game plan they've wanted maybe all year long, certainly since Terry Smith took over, in their win over Nebraska in a big way. That is a good Nebraska team. It is not as bad as Michigan State. I do believe maybe yours truly overestimated that they were... they were playing competition that wasn't nearly as good as Penn State had been playing. And if we rewind a couple weeks, remember Penn State took Indiana to the wire, number 2 team in the country, to the wire at home. Go to Michigan State and then play an uneven game on both sides of the ball. Penn State's defense gave up some big runs, wasn't necessarily playing clean in the first half, and then in the second half they decided to, turn on the Jets and scoot away. Coming into this game, I didn't know which team was going to show up, but, give credit to Penn State head coach Terry Smith with a lot of stuff going on this week, with a lot of things to balance, a lot of opportunities for players to feel like maybe you can check out, right? The adults are leaving. Some of the people that have been there for 12 years they're leaving the program. And no, none of that affected the locker room. The players on the field, the players on the depth chart, the people on the sideline. None of that affected them. And they went out and they kicked Nebraska's ass. I like to do my post-game analysis, the X's and the O's. They did a Michigan State this week. They went out there and handed them a receipt that says one ass whooping with a whoop at the front. And that's what happened. That's it. Penn State's offensive line played the way we thought they were going to play all year long. And this has been the infuriating thing. And again, give credit to Terry Smith here. They're playing more like those players we thought they were going to be. Drew Shelton had a great game. Venga Ioane had a great game. Andrew Rappelier, star performance, A+, head of the class performance at tight end as a run blocker. They've leaned into those things, and they've developed that play action off of the passing game. I was looking at some of the stats, and I'm just going to give this one to you off the top. This is not a complete stat, by the way. These are just the big plays that Penn State had off of play action. 20-yard pass, 39-yard pass, 5-yard touchdown, 20-yard pass, about 85 yards and a touchdown. And those are 4 completions of Ethan Grunkmeyer's 12 for 181. The first time he saw a 3rd and long where he had to throw the ball without the assist of play action, I'm fairly certain was the second drive of the third quarter. I'll go back and I'll clean that up tomorrow during my live analysis of this game. But Penn State had 412 yards, 231 on the ground. Everything that they needed to do, everything they wanted to do in the game came out and happened exactly as they would have drawn it up. And of course, here in the first 5 minutes, want to congratulate Kaytron Allen for the all-time rushing record in Penn State history, and of course for Nick Singleton tying Saquon Barkley's touchdown record at Penn State, which undoubtedly he will break on the road against Rutgers next week. So, historic backfield coming in the class of 2025. Those 2 players, the roles have reversed, right? You'd say the all-time leading rusher would be Nick Singleton, maybe. The guy who came in, nicknamed Fat Man, might be the touchdown guy getting near the goal line, and that's not necessarily the case. Now, it's been an interesting way to get here, but here is where we are. I'm T. Frank. This is the BWI Live post-game show. You are my co-host, and as always, how this rolls is I'm up here, tap dancing on a high wire, talking, and trying to read your comments at the same time. So if you want to get your thoughts here on the show, please let me know. Of course, we're going to have a conversation about Terry Smith. And does he fit as the head coach for Penn State going forward? Is that a realistic thing? We're going to weigh the pros and the cons, not just going to dismiss that out of hand because of maybe the realities of the coaching search, the realities of we're going to talk about that and some of those things that we see in, kind of what's happened so far, and maybe have an honest conversation about what we've seen over the last couple of weeks. But of course, the best way I get you to get your comments on air is, of course, to throw in a super chat. And it's not as a donation necessarily, although we appreciate the donation. It does not buy you airtime. But I'm up here, and I'm trying to read and talk at the same time. And if you've ever tried to do two things at once, I can't. The long story, I just can't do that. I'm going to do one thing, and then I'm going to do the other. And so it just helps me because it shows up in these big, bright letters. The way you see it when it comes up on camera is how it is in the chat. So then I can just go and click on it, and then we can have a conversation about that. So that's what's coming up on the show. But a lot of you know that already because you've been here the whole time. This has been a long, long season with Thanksgiving coming up, and we're finally down to it. Penn State has the opportunity to go to a bowl game. And the same thing we said earlier in the year when there were people saying Penn State's going to quit, they're going to pack it in. And Terry Smith said, "Oh, you think that's what's going to happen? You think that's what's going to happen?" And then they play their hearts out for the second half of this year. They have the opportunity to go to a bowl game. They have the opportunity to smack around Rutgers again, which I think this team really enjoys. And then they're going to go to a bowl game. And, I don't think all of these players are going to play. I think some of them are going to transfer. But the idea that they're not going to be able to field a roster with the way that this particular team has acted, I think that let's give them the benefit of the doubt, right? I had not given them the benefit of the doubt coming into this game. Like I thought they might be inconsistent. I didn't think they were going to be able to run the ball as effectively as they did. I thought they were going to run the ball effectively, but having both Nick Singleton and Kaytron Allen above 6 yards a carry, I did not think that was going to happen. I thought Kaytron Allen would have a Kaytron Allen game, and then, Nebraska's run defense, which had been playing better of late, apparently been playing worse competition. So those are my opening thoughts. We'll get into some of the other here's what happened and there's what happened throughout the first half and then the second half. But I want to get to your comments here on the Labatt Postgame Show. So Jeff Newman says, something to be said for loyalty, merit, and earning the head coach job. Terry deserves to be the next head coach at Penn State. That is the consensus here from Jack Miller. He asked about this on Thursday. He said, I wouldn't be mad at it. And I know you and your buddies disagree. He's what we need. It's not that we disagree that it's not Terry Smith, isn't deserving or isn't a candidate. That's not what we said on Thursday. It's the reality that of the preferences here. Pat Kraft fired a very successful head coach to go and make a big swing, to make a public statement. And I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying in any way, but those are the realities that we're facing, right? The people, the information, the conversations, and the context that we've had over the last 5.5 weeks. And so Terry Smith has been auditioning for the job the entire time. So I guess we're just going to get into it, right? That's what people want to talk about. Corey says, emotions aside, taking this team from the depth they are in, pulling them out of it, facilitating an offense and defensive turnaround. How has he not earned this? It's a fair question. It's a fair point. I think if he had won the game against Iowa, and I know this is kind of the same thing that we said with Matt Rule, right? Coming into this game, coming into the season, if he had won the Minnesota game, he'd be Penn State's head coach next week, right? Or whatever. It's not just one game. But they did lose to Iowa, Ohio State, and Indiana. That's also on the record, right? And I am not trying to say here one way or the other. I'm pointing out the counterfactuals, right? So you're saying, how has he not earned this? They did not beat Indiana. I think if they beat Indiana, you're having a hard time making an argument against it. But if you're saying great to elite, got to go get that big time win, they lost by, to Iowa, a decent football team in a game they should have won. And these are all unfair arguments either way, in my opinion. I don't think that it's necessarily should be even come down to 6 games of this particular season. He's been here for 12 years. He's been recruiting at a high level. He's the associate head coach. there's a long track record of work for Terry Smith at Penn State. So these are all valid points. If you want the devil's advocate point, and I don't think you do, but this is the other half of the conversation. You saw it on the halftime show. Matt Rule wants to make a big hire. And so is Terry Smith that? And that's what we've been saying here is like, I think the people on this show really like Terry Smith. There was a joke for a while on our recruiting show that Fitz was Terry Smith's unofficial PR agent, because anytime he would come up when we talk about Pittsburgh recruiting and we talk about Terry as one of the lead recruiters here, or in any of these conversations about great players that come to Penn State, a lot of them cross paths with Terry Smith, and he's a part of their journey, and he's a big influence on them deciding to go and join Penn State. So it is a running joke that he's a very successful recruiter. So let's get into, I guess, that idea. That's a tick in his favor of can recruit, can build a program. And he's, I think, made some subtle overtures that he's also willing to follow Pat Kraft's model of, hey, do you want to spend? I'm willing to spend. I'm willing to be a leader in the locker room and not have everyone make the same amount of money, which is kind of like the what they were talking about. And I'm sure it's somewhere in between, right? I don't think he's going to go full NFL model and like he's going to make sure that guys on the roster are taken care of. But there seems to be an openness, and I think that there was some stuff that was floated out there, intentionally or not, that he's willing to like spend in recruiting, offer unprecedented NIL offers to certain recruits that merit the money. And then everything that happened tonight. If you're watching, if you're coming out of the stadium, you were at the game, you didn't see the broadcast. I don't know how, for everyone watching, how long was how long was A-Rob talking? Like 4 minutes straight of him just saying, hire Terry Smith as the head coach, right? Michael Robinson spent 4 minutes, I think, talking about that. Just saying that over and over again. That's not an accident. Like, Terry Smith is like putting stuff out there. I don't know, directly, indirectly, but like there are people campaigning for him to get the job. There is an active campaign going on here. And then the 409 pin. Also not an accident. He had other games at home where he was the head coach and otherwise. I firmly believe there's a reason he wore that pin tonight. First off, last chance he's going to have to do it, right? At home, at Beaver Stadium, to honor his former coach. I believe that. I'm not in any way saying that that's not part of it. But I also know there's a certain amount of fans, both online and not online. There's a certain amount of fans that probably have some money that want Joe Paterno's name to come up more often. So, yeah, I think Terry Smith really wants the head coaching job at Penn State, and he's trying as hard as he can to politic for that. And I give him a lot of credit because, like, I don't think that's a natural thing for him to do, because for anyone who's like a very honest and forthright person and somebody who's, we called him the truth teller, the straight shooter, right? Those things, making those choices, they don't feel comfortable. That's not something you do naturally. So he's really like putting it out there. And I guess the question is, we've had the conversation with him over the last couple of weeks about what's it like being the head coach? What's it like being the interim head coach? What are the things that you didn't realize about the job? And it's always the off the field stuff. It's always the CEO level things. And that is not in any way to say that he's been struggling at those things. It has been more like just the question of, is that part of his nature? Is that part of something he's going to be good at full time? Because that's what it is in college football. You are not the X's and O's guy anymore. You are the brand manager. You are the face of Penn State football. You and the quarterback are the face of Penn State football, and you're the face of the team more often. You know, we talk to James Franklin once a month, basically, all year long, and then during the season in spring football, once a week, twice a week sometimes 3 times a week. So you are more than just the coach. There's a lot of those responsibilities. And for fans in the chat, like, I get it. You love, and it's refreshing for you to have the ball coach in that spot, right? All the other things included. And that's the part where I'm just going to go, all the other things included. That's the thing that I think is the question mark and that people are going to say about Terry Smith. I don't know. But he's proven a lot of times over that he's ready to try. He's going to do the things necessary. He's going to put himself in the situation to do those things. So, emotions aside, is he the leader of an organization? Is he I hate using the CEO type thing again because it becomes media diarrhea coming out of my mouth because we all say the same thing. It all just flows and it doesn't. But like, can you be more than just the football? Can you be a head of the recruiting department? I think that's possible. Can you work with a GM? Can you be on NIL contracts? Can you understand the roster makeup and how you're going to allocate those resources? Are you willing to work with somebody to do those things while still maintaining control over the talent acquisition? Can you, branding, marketing, all those things that, you touch every aspect of those things. That's the part where a guy who has the charisma and national prominence and the ease of those moments, it's the veneer, right? It's the look of a head coach, of like the modern head coach, which is kind of like if Terry Smith is a classic sports car, they're some futuristic Tron vehicle, right? But do they work? I don't know. The classic sports car we know works. So I hear you. And I'm not trying to sit on the fence. I'm trying to honestly answer your question and not give a preference here because I don't have one. These are just the questions. These are the ideas that are going to decide this. Can you, as the head coach, get all of the big players to donate to the program and get you the money to get the players? Can you go into the portal? Can you do all these things? So, I'm just kind of spitballing with you here to have that conversation about those are going to be the questions about Terry Smith because leader of men is not a question. Adapter and ability to take a team in this particular situation and put them on a positive trajectory. That is not a question. Now, I want to know what are his preferences. So now I'm going to ask you that these are the things I'm interested in as Terry Smith, the head coach. Offensively, what is your philosophy? Are you going to run this next year? Like, is this going to be Ethan Grunkmeyer play action to infinity? Because I don't think that's sustainable. What do you want from your defense? What is your defensive belief? What are you running a 4-2-5? Do you want to have more of the Manny Diaz style? Do you want to find some common ground with Jim Knowles? Is that going to be part of the defensive belief system here? I don't know what Terry wants to be as a football mind because he's really been sitting in somebody else's seat this whole time, right? Like he's sitting in James Franklin's seat. That's not his seat. So what does he build? And is it Michigan? That would be my question. Like, is it going to be run the ball forever? And, developing quarterbacks, all those like high-level football things you need to win a championship, I want to know. I just want to ask him those questions. We haven't had any time to have those conversations because it's always been like, hey, you know how you're just learning how to do this job? How's just learning how to do this job going? So those are some of those. Those are some of the things. And also, again, to play devil's advocate, they have beaten Michigan State and Nebraska. Nebraska is a 7-3 team. They're 7-4 team now. But they hit, it feels even unfair to say. Like, I don't want to say they didn't beat Indiana because Indiana is the number 2 team in the country. But, like, they beat 2 teams in the mid and lower tier of the Big Ten and smacked this one at home. So I don't want to come off as disingenuous to say, like, before the game, hey, this is a good team. And then he beats the pants off a good team and be like, it was Nebraska. Like, it is both of those things. So I don't know where that leaves us. If you want Terry Smith to be the head coach, he is putting together the resume for that. And it feels like, at this point, a foregone conclusion that the team is playing great. And that's the other. Okay, so here's another thing that I want to talk about. Let's talk about the game again for a second. And I'm trying not to make this as much about like where T. Frank was wrong about this, because I'm a little bit embarrassed about that. But he got the offensive line to play like the offensive line we expected. He got the defense to play like the defense we thought they were going to be, where they dominated the line of scrimmage against a decent team. And again, Nebraska does not have the same level of talent, but Penn State has been so inconsistent. And in this game, Nick Dawkins got a pancake block. Nick Dawkins, now it's on an outside zone. They were running together, and I think the guy fell over, but like Doc pushed him. I think in the offensive line room when they're doing film, that's a pancake block. Drew Shelton had an awesome game. Venga Ioane had an awesome game. I saw Anthony Donko carrying Kaytron Allen for 10 yards. He almost got him the record by just shoving him forward. Those guys played like you would think they were going to play all year long. And I give that credit to Terry Smith. That is the difference here. He was able to work with Andy Kotelnicki to craft an offense that he wanted, which was run and play action. And they used some triple option looks, some old wishbone looks, with a fullback and a back and a deep back, in the backfield. Now they still didn't get to the pitch to Nick Singleton, which I think is coming next week, because they've been working on that for a while, by the way. There's a lot of good there of what Terry Smith has accomplished here, of getting this particular team to play like we thought they were going to, much more consistently, and on the defensive side of the ball as well. Now, that part I find interesting. So before we get into that, we do have to remind you that this is the Labatt Postgame Show. I'm wearing the fancy swag. But if you're listening on the podcast, you don't know that. You don't know that I'm wearing a very well-fitted, probably nylon. I don't know. It's polyester. I don't know fabrics. I'm not Kanye West. I don't know T-shirts, which is like a 15-year-old reference and nobody gets anymore. But this fall, nothing goes. And by the way, bringing up highly controversial Kanye West for no reason. Not my best decision tonight. This fall, nothing goes better with college football than an ice cold Labatt Blue or Labatt Blue Light, because when you bleed blue and white, you drink blue and light. Born in Canada, brewed in the USA, Labatt has been a game day tradition for fans who know how to celebrate each first down and every touchdown. And here's the best part. You can stock up on Labatt and score big off the field too. I don't know if they got one of these pullovers. This is really nice, by the way. I really like this pullover. I wear this other places. Visit rewards.labattusa.com to get rewarded with a buy beer, get gear program. So whether you're tailgating with 107,000 fans or you're wearing a 409 button in your final home game, crack a Labatt Blue or Labatt Blue Light and make every Saturday a win. Please drink responsibly. Buffalo, New York, Labatt, USA. We also have to get to our defensive player of the game, and I've got my fancy graphics. I got to play that as the intro, and I'm transitioning, and where did it go? There it is. The defensive player of the game is brought to you by State College criminal defense attorney Matt McClanahan. Matt is a Penn State alum and a Penn State football superfan, and also he's pretty good at this because, okay, so I'm sorry, Matt. He's been way off on a lot of games. We all were, right? Like, we all were in the first game, 6 games this year. He lets his heart lead him a lot as a Penn State fan. And then he sent me a text today, and I'm actually going to read you part of this one because I was like, you know where if you watch our stuff, you know where I was earlier this week. And I just didn't see this. And I'll just get to the chase. The line is down to 7.5. Penn State wins the battle of backup QBs, 34-14, exploiting the weak Huskers run D. Only a small contingent of the fans will see Kaytron Allen break the all-time rushing record in person. He pretty much nailed it. He said the Sharps are on Penn State. Nebraska's a huge public dog this week. And you probably want to listen to him when he says stuff. You know, this one he was spot on. He's also a great attorney. So if he's very accessible, you can reach him nights and weekends. Don't just call during a Penn State football game. But by the way, This is appropriate that I'm trying to tell you about him as a defense attorney, and we're talking about it as a Penn State fan because that's how we met. That's why he's a sponsor here on the show. Huge fan of the show and also of Penn State football. And if you ever need his services, just know you're gonna get along. MattMlaw.com. So check him out there. The defensive player of the game today. I am gonna go ahead and just say it. Dom DeLuca is the defensive player of the game. Now, was he out of position for a 50-yard run to start the game? Yes, he was. Did he also finish with 10 total tackles, 6 of them solo, to help the Nittany Lions win and to shut down Nebraska's offense? Yeah, also that. And senior night, Dom, defensive player of the game for your final home game. Congratulations. I think he deserves that. I think for all of the effort, all the stuff he puts up with, I think Dom earned that here in his final game. Mark Campbell, also great. Here's my question. What was Nebraska's game plan? I don't really know. So, run the ball isn't a game plan. Run the ball, and Penn State had a couple of different things they were trying to do, from running counter, which was successful. They ran outside zone, which was successful. That's where they got that 50-yard run for Kaytron Allen. They had a couple of wildcat wrinkles I do want to talk about. But for Nebraska, they had a bye week. This is another thing I was thinking about coming in this game. They're coming off rest. They have an opportunity to give TJ Lateef kind of like a game plan for him to play and, give him an opportunity to do whatever. Maybe run him a little bit more. Maybe get him out, roll him out, get him in space. And really the game plan was give Emmett Johnson the ball a whole bunch. And it didn't work in the first half, and suddenly now you're down. I think it was in the second quarter or just at the end of the first. They kick a field goal. Let me pull that up here for a second. And then that was the only time for the rest of the game they were within a score of the game. Yeah, halfway through the second quarter, it was 10-3, and that was the end of it. Penn State scored a whole bunch, and then the game was over. So I don't know. Maybe their game plan was something that we just didn't get to see. But they go 7 plays, 16. Here's the thing. Here's the thing about early in the game. It was kind of going the way they would have wanted it to go. 7 plays, 69 yards. They get down into the red zone, and Amari Campbell could have gotten the defensive player of the game for his stop. And I know they gave credit to Zane Durant. He was there as well. But that stop on fourth down was Amari Campbell going to the knees of Emmett Johnson, taking him down, fourth down stop, and Penn State gets the ball, and then they go 98 yards for a touchdown. So a stop, 4th and 1 at the 2-yard line. Otherwise, if they score on that, opening drive touchdown, and things probably feel a little different. They probably don't feel as panicked to be down 10-0. And then, of course, Penn State gets another. The second quarter was huge, right? The second quarter got away from Nebraska in a big way because they don't get that. Then they have to settle for a field goal in the second quarter, and then it kind of gets embarrassing from there. They go 3 and out, and Penn State gets a ball back, and it just snowballs after that. So maybe there's a little bit of we don't know. I don't know what the game plan was because they had to abort fairly soon, halfway through the second quarter. And so coming out at halftime, they had to be a little bit more aggressive. And TJ Lateef throws 37 times in this game. And that's not a recipe for them to succeed. I thought he was okay. He threw some dimes, some dots, absolute lasers, rockets, however you want to describe them. I ran out. I wanted to go on for a good 30 seconds there. Couldn't think of another one. And Penn State kind of forced them off their game plan with the way the offense played. And really, that's the story of this game. And so the Penn State defense got to do what they've wanted to do all year, which is play with a lead. Any defense wants to play with a lead, but this team really wants to play with a lead. They don't want to be giving up a lot of rushing yards. And that to me, that was a big deal. Because early in the game, the first 3 drives, Nebraska was kind of getting what they wanted, just critical stops in the red zone. And suddenly, now you're in a big old U-turn, and you got to change what you want to do, and now you're throwing the ball way too much. Ethan Grugmeyer had 12 passes and was by far the most effective quarterback in the game. What is this? Because he was, the game plan is he ripped off chunks of yards through the air. He averaged Hold on. Math on the fly, guys. Don't do this. Don't do this to yourself. Yeah, we'll get to that later. 12, 10 yards past. I'm not doing it. Somebody else do it. Put it in the chat. I have too many things I got to get to, including your thoughts and questions. Nice win, but hiring Terry Smith as head coach is an emotional decision based on 2, maybe 3 wins. That's crazy. So Stephen Light thinks the other thing. We talked about that earlier. Appreciate Stephen being here. Ryan says, love the W, and it's a great story, but Terry is not an elite head coach. He's done a great job, but he's not a CEO. So, I mean, there you go. Ryan said it, and Stephen said it. I took 10 minutes to say it. They said it into 5 sentences. All right. B. Bacaro is here with a $50 donation to the channel. I will call it out when it's like you're putting a 50 on the table. That's like drinks for everybody. Thank you very much. I don't know if it's realistic or not to hire Terry Smith, but I have not been this proud to be a Penn State fan since 2012. It's not because of him it's because of him and how those players rallied. I mean, I think that I'm not going to co-sign on that. I think there's a little bit of, and this has been happening for the last 6 weeks, right? Of like everything that's positive then has to throw shade at James Franklin. But I do think like, yeah, that team had a different feel about them today. There was Nate said on Tuesday, like the Disney ending that you want doesn't necessarily mean it's going to show up. And they made that happen. Like that, they got the Disney ending so far. They got to do it one more time. But B. Bacarico, yeah, like you're getting the Disney ending, and I think a lot of it does have to do with Terry Smith. They're playing really well, and they've got a clear focus and an identity and a personality. And again, we always talk about those things coming from the head coach, and Terry Smith has a very specific idea of what he wants this team to be. I hope if he does, and I do hope that he gets what he wants. Like I wish these people success, and that is incongruous, right? For everyone to be the head coach at Penn State, and everyone to get the next head coaching job at wherever, and everyone to find the perfect candidate to hire, and it all works out. And like not everybody gets everything they want in this situation. But if Terry Smith becomes the head coach somewhere else, I hope it works out for him. I'm deeply curious as to what his offensive philosophy is. Because I do think that there's an upper limit to like, what are you, if this is what you want to be, is there an upper limit to that unless you can get elite quarterbacks and elite receivers? Because here's my problem. When you do it right, yes, it works. And you can be Alabama or you can be Michigan in 2023 or whatever, 24, whatever it was. But you can also be Iowa if you want to focus on run and play action and run and then run and run and play action. I thought there was a good mix tonight. But 12 passes in a game, you're not going to recruit a lot of quarterbacks to come in and play in that offense. Now, they recruited a lot of quarterbacks to come in and play in the offenses that didn't score points, didn't win games, and didn't win big games. So we've seen them have game plans that have gotten them close, but not win big games, right? So is that something where with the full weight of head coach Terry Smith at Penn State, is that going to be a winning formula if that is his formula? I'm working from like wildly incomplete information because this is the only plan we've seen him put together. Like, by the way, in the middle of a season, which is insanely hard to do and fairly impressive. So, again, I just go back to, because I'm the X's and O's, guys, I can't help it. But it is what happens on the field. You recruit to the scheme. And your recruiting to the scheme determines what players you go after and what players are interested in you. And that's what I think a lot of the people here are talking about in the chat, is like, are the elite players going to be interested in playing for Terry Smith? And that's what I've come around to the idea that, yeah, maybe. I mean, we can't talk about him as an elite recruiter in Pittsburgh to get the best of the best. Because remember, Kemon Spell and Khalil Taylor for the class of 2027 were committed to this program early on, right? Whippeal guys. And that's definitely got Terry Smith's fingerprints on it. So, like, is it just a Pittsburgh thing? Or is he able to make that a part of the recruiting identity at Penn State, that you want to come here, and whatever that might be with the money and the personality, the recruiter, all those things, does that work when you then put it on a different platform? Elevate it from regional recruiting and then working as the head guy behind the scenes to being the guy, the face, and the person walking in to a 5-star offensive lineman in Texas and saying, you should go to Penn State. Or a high 4-star, right? Like, those are the things that I think people in the chat here are questioning, like Ryan. James Franklin brought Terry in, and James Franklin made Terry the associate head coach. It's hilarious to see the nutty comments from PSU fans. Now, Ryan, he likes to be the rational person here among Penn State fans. Huge Penn State fan, but also, like, we've been having this conversation in the chat for a little bit, and it's now here on the postgame show with maybe some people who are not part of the regular conversations here. Ryan is very much of the he's got a CEO view of these things from my understanding of his background. So that's where we are here in the chat. Appreciate you guys. It's loading here again. Let's see. I am sorry. I hate reading while on air. Let's go with this one. Being able to play loose when the pressure is off is not special. It's the difference between being a solid player versus a start player. So this has got to be something that I'm just jumping in the middle of. That is a huge personality marker of this team, though, right? So what is... Penn State was playing tight, and I think that to me, the biggest misidentifier from Penn State fans who have seen this team through the first 6 weeks of the season, there was this question of, like, are they apathetic? Do they care? There was these really stupid thoughts of, like, well, they all get their money guaranteed. James Franklin's money is guaranteed. Why would he work hard? I saw a lot of, and I'm going to use this phrase again. There were a lot of puckered sphincters on the sideline in the first 6 games of the year for Penn State. I think that's fairly clear. And so tightening up in big games, being, I think, maybe overeager to make plays and sometimes making mistakes because you're making, trying too hard or being in the moment instead of, like, you are not the master of the moment, right? Like, those things were real in the first half. And not the idea that, like, they didn't care. Now, for whatever reason, those same players, is the pressure off because the expectations of a national championship run are gone? Is the pressure off because they have a new leader who's reframed everything and now they're seeing things differently? I do think that aspect of it was very obvious tonight, was very obvious against Indiana, and was not the case against Ohio State. I thought that team, as much as they fought and played hard in the first half, and I think executed fairly well, to me, the game plan and the general feeling of it was they were a little tight in that game. The philosophy was a little bit more of, like, we've got a very narrow path to walk, and we're not, as Terry Smith said against Iowa, going to empty the clip. At least the way the play calling worked. So they are playing differently. The same players are getting you different results later in the year. Part of that is emphasizing, here's a great situation we can talk about. Andrew Rappleyea, I want to bring him up again because he's very good in this game. He was very good last week. He has really, I think, emerged in the second half of the season as the best tight end for Penn State. Khalil Dinkins has been doing a lot of the dirty work again, but I've noticed, it's been noticeable, Andrew Rappliea's tenacity, his blocking, and he's contributing in the passing game. Is it because he's been given more opportunity? Yes, it is. And I'll try not to be rhetorical and just ask questions to answer. The one I don't know. He's obviously healthy now. Was he, like, is he just more comfortable and healthy at this time of the year? They've given him a lot of snaps that Luke Reynolds was getting. And so that decision is a Terry Smith decision. Is a decision James Franklin could make at the beginning of the year when Rapp's coming off of an injury and it's like just kind of getting back into things, as opposed to Luke Reynolds, who's been there all offseason. So there are some aspects of that where I think the benefit of the time there for Andrew Rappleyea to play same player playing differently now. But Anthony Donko, same question. Is he just like farther away from those injuries? Or is it the way he's playing because of, inspiration, changing the offense, making things simpler, letting them just block instead of having all of the rigmarole around the offensive performance? Those are the things where there is a certain amount of they're playing differently because they're being inspired to play differently, but they're also playing differently because some of these guys are just farther away from their injuries and their key pivotal players up front. So I think there's a little bit of food for thought there, but playing loose and playing confident, playing with swagger, as they talked about this year, those things are absolutely happening. Those are things Terry Smith is delivering on. And so this has been a 40-minute Is Terry Smith the next head coach of Penn State conversation, and I hope that you have fully come to the answer and realization that I don't know. I don't know. There's a good long list of things he's done very well this year. And there is a list of things that I don't think you're going to know because he's not a proven head coach who's done it elsewhere to take over this program. And hold on. I need to have a sip of this. Nobody likes to see or hear you drink on air, so I apologize, but I was about to lose my voice. Pat Kraft fired James Franklin, who had an impeccable track record as a consistent deliverer of 10 wins. However you view that is not good enough, or if you're Virginia Tech, over the moon, happy about. To be the 12th best team in college football. Maybe the 7th some years. Maybe even the 4th one year. But maybe never the first. And maybe they could have been, but the sport didn't allow for that back in the day when they had some really good teams and they were shut out of the playoff because it was only 4 teams. So the idea is to go get somebody who is a top 5 head coach, who has proven that he's going to do all those things. You've seen him do it. And now the only thing he needs is the resources at Penn State, the logo, your blessing, and all the money in the world. That was the point of firing James Franklin, who is a good coach. And I don't care if you're going to throw bananas, whatever. Like, good is a word we can use to describe James Franklin, but not good enough for the situation. That is the decision they made. So then you're going with a wild card of Terry Smith as your head coach, who has not been a Power 4 head coach anywhere, right? They were talking about like his last head coaching experience was in high school. So now we have to have the conversation, and I guess we'll spin this forward to like what's the field look like? The smoke about Kalen DeBoer being unhappy at Alabama. Now you're hoping that the guy at Alabama with the resources is going to lose a big game so that he can be your next head coach. And again, like we talked about this in the last postgame show, I find that hilarious. That Penn State fans, if they want their big swing, they want the best head coach that's proven to get to a national championship game with Washington, which I don't think is a premier program on Penn State's level, but is a very good program. You're hoping that that guy can't win the big game so that you can hire him to replace the guy that couldn't win the big game. I find that hilarious for the irony, right? Let's say that doesn't happen, and that's like your number one. And Marcus Freeman, I don't think that. I don't think. Not that I don't think he's a good coach. Like I don't think there's any reality that's going to happen. So now the question is like the other guys, the Georgia Tech coach, the JMU coach, and then Terry Smith. What's the big difference other than like those guys are doing it now, and Georgia Tech maybe is a little bit different than JMU, but Penn State's being the head coach, right? Terry Smith's being the head coach here for 6 games for Penn State. I think that's more of a reasonable argument. I think if the field is those guys or Terry Smith, I don't see a huge difference. And by the way, I have not studied any of those other coaches to like tell you what their philosophies or thoughts are. But I think that like that's the argument that makes a lot of sense to me is, okay, you you didn't get your big swing. Matt Rule signed an extension. Kurt Cinetti scoffed and then signed his in extension. Lane Kiffin probably thought about it for half a second and then was like, well, I'll see if Alabama's going to be open or LSU, right? So like the big names, Mike Elko decided to stay at Texas A&M. So your big swings didn't work, and now you've got to find a different plan, and maybe this falls into your lap, right? And not to say like it's a consolation prize, but found money's found money. Let's see. Glue Liquor says, top criteria for Terry Smith as head coach on maybe a short-term contract is whether he'll be able to get many of the decommits to recommit. No. So that is such short-term thinking. And I appreciate like the desire. Okay, where do I start with this? There's a couple of very important points here. The class of 2026 was like the 14th ranked class. There's some good talented players in there. But if you're going to make the decision that you have upended the apple cart to just go and recoup quality top 300 guys, but that are closer to 300 than they are 100 commits in the class of 2026, and you're going to change the course of Penn State football history for Terry Smith, and then you're going to give him a 3-year contract which doesn't even get you through their whole college career, that is not a good plan. And I appreciate the comment, but like you need think big long term. Those are like, this is a think big thing. And so if you're going to like put Terry Smith on a short leash, a guy who's never done it before, and you're going to say you got 3 years. And basically what you're saying is like next year you got to win, even though this team that we built this year is full of seniors that are all leaving. You're setting the guy up for failure just to get guys from 2026 that they missed on a lot of the elite players already. So the decommits, like, it's a mess, but that's the last thing you need to be trying to clean up, in my opinion. Like, keeping the players on the roster as best you can. And then from there, trying to rebuild whatever you can. And yes, if Terry Smith is the head coach, then it will include those players. But it is about maximizing the window to get as much talent as possible, which no matter what at this point needs to include the transfer portal. Because Penn State's losing a lot of players, and those decommits they're going elsewhere. Like a lot of those guys are just going elsewhere. I understand like trying to get Kevin Brown and Messiah Mickens and Jasir Rogers back, but are they going to do a double about face? Like I for some of them, you know, like Messiah Mickens being in and out a couple of times and kind of flirting with a couple of different places. I find that hard as a rational plan, because it's just looking at what was already there, which from what I was told by Penn State fans wasn't good enough. And when it comes to the recruiting and to rewind the whole thing about where we are right now and why we are there, I can get behind the theory of like James Franklin, the recruiter, was losing because money was more important than relationships, and that disconnect he was losing ground in that battle. I can 100% get behind that. And so you need somebody who's going to emphasize the NIL more than he was willing to. I can get behind that conversation if you think that that's the path forward. Now, a lot of coaches apparently don't think that. But like Penn State was in a battle where there was some attrition going on in recruiting the last 2 years. Now, to say that he was never a good recruiter is also lunacy. Like, we can't just live in this world of binary, like light and dark, and everything is the most of one thing or the other. But Glue Liquor, I appreciate you giving your thoughts here on the show. Also, Glue Liquor making me say that like 3 or 4 times. Kudos to you. Showtime, he's back. He says, T. Frank, didn't see this blowout coming. This coaching staff and players are really playing their hearts out. Terry Smith fan, but realistically can't see Pat Kraft banking his job on Terry Smith. Your thoughts? Yeah, like that's another aspect of this. Wherever people gather, you're going to find politics. And Pat Kraft really wants to get this right. But he also really wants to continue being the AD at Penn State. And so that is, I think that's, Showtime, you nailed it. That's a big part of this, and why I think some of the people like Ryan would be like, yeah, there's no way Terry's going to be the head coach and that's what's baked into the no way. It's the implicit part of like the politics of it, the situational aspect of Pat Kraft in the seat making the decision. And then, the campaign coming from Terry Smith, where Michael Robinson is out there stump speeching at halftime for him to get the head coaching job, as opposed to like, he's obviously a candidate because he's got this high profile status, because Pat Kraft made a big decision and needs to follow it up with a big decision. Lincoln Riley is available. Is he available? Is that something that happened in the last 50 minutes while we've been talking? I don't think so. Maybe he is. But how's that going at USC, who have been splashing money, by the way? Like, that's a team that's been splashing money, and it doesn't seem to be getting them where they want to go. By the way, if we want to throw shade at the Big 12 again, Lincoln Riley, Big 12 head coach, play caller. Coming to the Big 10, mixed results. It's better this year. And like the USC program, what he inherited, it does seem like there were some real problems there, right? Like nobody was thinking USC was the USC of the early 2000s. But also he had Caleb Williams, who was a number 1 overall pick, right? And that didn't seem to go really well. Leonard says Franklin failed because he was too loyal to his roster. Sure. T. Frank literally doesn't know anything about the coaching search. Okay, sure. Yeah, not nothing. But of course, like some of the things we talk about over at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com, I'm not going to be giving you all the information here on the YouTube show. That's not appropriate given what what we do here. But I can tell you that Terry Smith is coming up in just a few minutes over on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel, the Penn State coach feed for our press conferences. So if you want to give him a listen to what he had to say about the postgame in his postgame press conference, we'll talk to you about that over there as well after the game. And then our incident analysis coming up with Fitz and Nate and Greg after the game, give you their thoughts to the game. I would like to see, let me go back to my notes here, because we haven't actually talked about the football game. We just talked about Terry Smith being the next head coach. The game that I thought was going to happen, by the way, happened for about 3 drives in the third quarter. When Penn State did not run the ball well, the Nebraska defense that you saw in the third quarter for about 5 minutes, that's what happened. They do have a pretty decent umbrella coverage. And on 3rd and 8, Grunmeyer takes a sack, and they have to punt, and they go 3 and out. So I keep wanting to call them Indiana. The red is getting me. Nebraska came out in the third quarter, gave up a touchdown, but then kind of locked in for about 10 minutes and tried to make it a game, and then Penn State went for it on a 4th down and then salted the game away. Yeah, there's nothing from they didn't really do anything tonight. There's nothing really to talk about with that defense. They were bad. There was one play where Kobe Howard blocked a defensive end, and I think it might have been on Nick Singleton, on a goal line run. That's the sign of a bad team. When the things that I kind of make fun of offensive coordinators for, I lightly tease them for, yes, this 295-pound defensive end, you're absolutely going to block him with a 190-pound receiver, and you wonder why the play got blown up. They got a first down on that. And so, Nebraska does not have the same level of talent as Penn State. Penn State had not played up to their level of talent, which leads us back to the Terry Smith conversation. So, here's what we're going to do. I'll give you one more chance here in the chat to give me some of your thoughts, and then we're going to wrap things up here. Because it seems like right now what we're doing is we are spiraling back into James Franklin is bad. And, I'm just bored of that conversation because we've been having it for 5 years now. And, he got fired, so you got it. It's right. Yeah, okay. Yeah, we're talking about Michigan now, so we don't need to be doing that. Thank you for being here. I appreciate everyone who showed up tonight after Penn State got a huge win over Nebraska, 37-10. If you don't show up for the post-Thanksgiving game against Rutgers, happy Thanksgiving. Thanks for being here for the 2025 season. But I encourage you to come back. We'll have some fun this week talking about this game. We'll be talking about Penn State in the bowl, eligibility bowl, the first postseason. All right, I figured it out. I know exactly what the hook is for this next week. This is the first game of the postseason. It's win or go home. Actually, the last 3 games have been, and so far, they're advancing to bowl eligibility. Next week, win or go home. And by win, you get to go on and play in a bowl game around Christmas. So, the stakes are there. We're talking about it this week on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel. Of course, if you want to know more about what happened in this game, why they were able to take Nebraska out to the woodshed, we'll be talking about that and recapping those things on the Blue White Illustrated over at bluewhiteillustrated.com with my film review coming up tomorrow. All right, we'll talk to you then.